Welcome to this online workshop about Collegial Coaching Conversations, a book that contains tools for teachers who coach teachers. This book was written by coach and educator Martin Richards. Martin's mission is to transform the education system from within. Martin Richards has a background as an educator. He's been a teacher in primary school and in secondary school and in adult education for about 30 years. Towards the end of his career, he retrained as a coach and worked through the Swedish government on coaching educators at schools in Sweden. From this work was continued a training course for teachers in how to observe each other's lessons and carry out coaching feedback in the most respectful and effective way. And it is this experience that forms the basis of the book, Collegial Coaching Conversations. There are three main tools in the book. One or two of them you may already know, and one of them you probably don't. The first one is called SMART, and it's used for effective goal setting. Goals that are set in a smart way are more effective than ones that will be set in a more random way. GROW is about the structure of the coaching conversation. It has four key elements. The third tool is called a form, which gives a form, a structure to the whole coaching relationship, which may last months or perhaps years. So in what situations might you find teachers coaching teachers? I'd like to illustrate by telling a story. The story of two novice trainee teachers who at the end of a Friday afternoon came into the staff room and were at the end of their wits. Because as you know, if you work in secondary school, teenagers can be quite demanding, particularly on a Friday afternoon when they too have run out of battery and have been perhaps rude, difficult, challenging, any one of 100 different things. These two teachers came into the staff room and were ventilating about their experience of working with these students. I was at the school as a visitor. I had no authority. I had no reason to speak to these teachers, except that I really recognized their frustration and wanted to help. How could I help? The first thing I need to do is to form a relationship with the teachers that might lead to me being able to support them in finding a way of venting their frustration in a more constructive way. I walked up to the pair and I kind of apologized for overhearing what they were saying, but it was, to be honest, impossible not to hear them. And they became aware that they'd been filling up the whole staff room with their wailing and bemoaning of their life as a teacher. And I asked if I could offer them a different perspective. Remember, I was a visitor, I had no authority, but I was an older person than they were, and I had 30 years, 20-something years experience to offer them. So they were curious a little bit and said, okay. So I asked them what it was that they wanted to achieve by speaking in that particular way. And it turned out that both of them just wanted to express, take out their uncomfortable feelings about the classes that they were teaching. I asked them how long they needed to do that for, whether the 10 minutes they've been doing it already, 15 minutes maybe, whether that was enough or whether they needed more time or whether less time would have been okay. And they agreed that 10 minutes was about right. And I asked them what they wanted the other person, their partner, if you like, to do whilst they were venting. Because what was happening was teacher A would say, oh, the class is terrible. And teacher B would say, oh, yeah, but mine's even worse. And the conversation was going up through the roof. It often happens when people are frustrated. They need to be heard. So we arrived at the need to be heard, the need also for no advice. Actually, one of the teachers said, yes, you can give me some advice. When I've said everything, you can give me some advice. But once she'd said it, she said, no, actually, I changed my mind. I just want to get my words out there. I don't want you to give me any advice. I just want you to listen to me. Then I asked them when and where it would be appropriate to do this. How many people would you include in the conversation? Other teachers, your students, the head teacher? They agreed that the two of them could solve it on their own, but probably would choose a different place and might be a different time. If they were not off balance, it being a Friday afternoon and they were very tired, they would probably go to a cafe and have a conversation there that was more private. So what did we do? We'd use SMART without knowing it. I asked them to be specific about what exactly it was they needed. What do they need from each other? And the measurability was, how do you know that you are halfway done? How do you know that you're halfway through the story? How much time do you need? And is this accepted by you and the people around you? That's when they decided to take the subject, the conversation outdoors. Is it realistic that you have a conversation in another place for 10 minutes where you only listen to each other and give no advice? It was indeed realistic. Time framed actually helped them to decide in advance that they would meet next Friday, knowing what Fridays are like, and plan to have a ventilation session with each other on a semi-regular basis. So you see how SMART can inform and give structure to a conversation that is both respectful and impactful. The next tool is all about saving time. It's called Grow, but I'll come to the structure in a moment because I have a little story to tell you first. Many teachers tell me that they don't have time. When I was coaching educators, and by that I mean school counselors, classroom teachers, subject teachers, head teachers, deputy head teachers, anyone within the education system, they would all say the same thing. They don't have time for coaching because they're so busy responding to the urgent, stressful demands of their day. When on earth do you get time for coaching? So I asked the questions, how much time they would save by being coached for an hour per month. Some of them took 2 hours a month, just to let you know that an hour a month was pretty much the lowest limit for me. How much time would they save? One teacher that I'd like to share with you, he got curious by this. He thought, can I save time by giving time to coaching? Let's see. So he gave me an hour of his time where we went through the process of Grow. We laid out the goals. We discussed and came to a solution quite quickly. Within the hour, we both built a relationship and went through one of his issues that he was struggling with. And he found that by being listened to, he found his own solutions, which took a lot of weight off his shoulders. Okay, it took an hour the first time, but the second time he came, he brought with him a list of topics that he'd like to have answers to. Now, he wasn't getting the answers from me, he was getting the answers through the coaching. So we sat down, he had a list, piece of paper, and I said, what's on the top of your list? Setting a goal for the conversation. And we rocketed through the first topic in about 20 minutes. We were done. He arrived at a plan of action for that topic. Okay, moving on to the next one. And moving on to the third one during that second hour. What he was learning was that he's capable of finding the solutions himself, if only he slows down, takes the time to follow a process that leads him to his own solution. We had 4 sessions. In the last session, he brought 4 topics. I remember it because it was 4 sessions and 4 topics. And he told me then that those 4 topics he'd been carrying around all week. Normally he'd carry around in his head and he'd worry about them. But what he'd been able to do, as the urgent topics were taken care of, the less urgent ones he was able to park in his own mind until I am with my coach. I know that I can solve this problem with my coach. I don't have to worry about it. And that saved him a lot of time, particularly time at night when he'd rather be sleeping than thinking about the problems that he was carrying. Through the coaching, he was getting better sleep. So how much time can you save by being coached an hour a month? At least 4. Let's look at the tool. It's called Grow. Easy to remember. It contains 4 elements. The first one is a deep dive into the goal. You can use SMART to be specific, measurable, accepted, realistic, and create a time frame around the goal. So I spend quite a lot of time getting the goal right because we want it to be very clear. Often speaking about the goal is all that needs to happen. The rest of it falls out of the mouth of the person you're coaching. By setting the goal, they automatically focus their energy on the outcome rather than the problem. And that is often enough to get the results out. The second part can be reality. Check in on their current circumstances. Here I spend a very little amount of time out of respect for acknowledging where the educator is in their real life, their working life. What's happening? This is more open the door, look in, and then out again, because you don't want to go into the reality, because that's a problem. You want to go to the goal. So if I'm going to spend 20 minutes on the goal and reality, I'd spend 15 of those on the goal. Then comes opportunities. What's possible? What have you done before that you haven't yet tried again? What have you not done before? Who could you ask? This is an outward brainstorming of all sorts of different opportunities, possibilities, probabilities, and some of them are a bit out there, some of them are a bit crazy, and that's good because we're testing new ground. You might go, hang on a minute, this is not within the scope of reality. You might go back to reality in a minute and say, like, this is not possible. But you need to look at opportunities. I would spend as much time on opportunities as I do on the goals. And when the educator becomes more comfortable with defining their goals, as they do, then it's the opportunities that take up most of the time in the coaching. And then the way forward. You need to choose one way forward. It's often difficult to choose the right way forward. So you don't choose the right way forward. You choose a way forward. Anything that feels it's possible, you give it a try. And then you loop back next time. What did you try? What happened? Is it solving the problem? So grow. So the book is about observing lessons and giving feedback that is of a coaching nature. The question that we were asked was, how can teachers arrange to observe other teachers' lessons and both give and receive feedback in the most effective and sustainable way. Now, lesson observations are usually done for two reasons. One, the teacher is new and is being observed by the head of the school, head of the department, with a view to improving the teacher's skill in teaching. So the learning goes from the observer to the teacher. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to flip that and have the new teacher observe an experienced teacher's lesson. And the idea then is that the experienced teacher is a role model for the new teacher, and the new teacher would learn. In this case, a little bit different, because the teachers are on the same level. Two equal teachers. One will be observing the other, so the other can learn from themselves. I'll say that again because it's quite important. The teacher that's observing is supporting the teacher who's teaching to learn from themselves. That means there's no advice, no recommendations that come from the observer. There may be in the observer's mind lots of advice, but they park it. It doesn't come from them. It comes from the teacher reflecting on what they actually did in the classroom, something that's observed. And the tool that we use for this is called A-Form. The A stands for align or agreement, where you decide how to work together. Who are we when we're working together? Am I coming to observe you to teach you something? Am I coming to observe you to learn something? Or is this the new one about lesson observation and coaching feedback? I'm coming to observe you so that you can learn from yourself. How will we work together? Down to details like where shall I sit? What shall I observe? How will I note my observations? Will I write them down? Will I make a video, an audio, take pictures? And what do I do with that information? How do I keep it secret if I'm keeping it secret? Or is it public? Or who's it for? How do we work together? Then everything gets written down in a document between the two teachers. And between any two teachers, this document will be unique, but it contains similar items about confidentiality, about what to look at, what to observe and what not to observe, about what happens to the information, and also the purpose. The purpose being, I am here to observe you so that you can learn from yourself. So it's all written down, formalized. That gives the foundation for the observation to take place. So then the teacher observes their colleague. It's interesting to note that their students are also involved in the observation in an interesting way, something one can deal with in the formalization. Who do I observe? Do I observe the teacher, the students, the interaction between them? What am I observing? That observation takes place, usually during a lesson, but in the book I explain how you can shorten the time for that. Usually the align and formalize is done in one meeting, and that can take an hour to begin with. Probably after 3 or 4 of those, it could be down to half an hour, 20 minutes. The observation of a lesson takes the time of a lesson, but that can be reduced dramatically. What happens after the lesson? It could be immediately after the lesson, which is the best, but not always practical. It could be the next day or the next week. Better to have it close to, if possible. And then the observer helps the teacher to reflect on what happened, really happened. Look, I've got notes. What really happened, and what could you do differently to make something that you want to happen actually happen? The reflection is always anchored in the observations, not the observer's opinion or experience. So there's no advice coming from the observer. The last part of that is to modify something. And we're using the word modify because change is too big. Change would be to take out a chunk of behavior and replace it with something else. That's too big to ask. What we're talking about is modification. So just an example from smoking. Being an ex-smoker myself, I know how hard it is to quit smoking. I might say, oh, I want to quit smoking. I'm going to stop immediately. I'm never going to smoke again. Great, but not very real. So what we do is we modify. We reduce the bad habit or whatever the teacher's doing they want to reduce, or we increase to something that they're doing well a little bit, maybe 10% a week or 10% a lesson over a period of many, many weeks, possibly a whole term. So we modify over a long period gently. So the teacher who's teaching is in charge of the little changes. So let's talk to you the three tools, SMART, GROW, and A-form. The book itself has, in story form, because as you can tell, I like to tell stories, activities that describe the course plan for a teacher training course, a one-day teacher training course that gets teachers to understand and begin to use both SMART, GROW, and A-form so that they can observe each other's lessons and give each other coaching feedback. The contents begin with active listening because that's one of the key skills. It's all about the observer listening and observing with their eyes in an active way and taking out their own judgments. No judgments, only what you see and hear. Even active listening is a little biased, but we're careful to notice if we do have biases. We teach them the three tools, and then we do an alliance coaching. Remember the A form, the first letter stands for alliance. We do a demonstration of the alliance coaching. We do for all the contents, an introduction, a demonstration, and a debrief. So for the alliance coaching, we do an introduction, we demonstrate it live in the room, and the book takes you through story into the two trainers who are holding the course. What are they thinking and feeling whilst doing this on stage in front of the audience of teachers who are learning how to do it? Reading about it is powerful. Seeing it happen live is extremely powerful. And it gives the teachers the foundation to stand on, to move into doing it for themselves. So we debrief to let the teachers decode the skills that the coach is using to coach their partner. We do a lesson observation. In the book, I reveal how to do a lesson observation in about 10 minutes instead of maybe an hour. That is, it's a replacement for actually doing the observation, but we recommend doing the observation a few times and leaving this second method for when it's impossible to actually do the observation because of reality. It's good. It's in some ways better because it leads into the next section. But there are positive things to be gained by actually doing the observation. So we talk about lesson observation, we do an introduction, we do a demo. You get to read in the book about the thoughts and feelings of both the coach and the person being coached, and hear the dialogue with the teachers as they crack the code for the skills, the competencies they are beginning to learn in order to be able to go and observe each other's lessons and give each other coaching feedback. The last part was reflective feedback, where again, we do an introduction and a demonstration showing the teachers just how easy it looks. And then they go and practice it and they discover actually it's quite difficult because they are using the let's say they're using normally they use their right hand and now they're using their left hand. It's a little bit difficult to do it the first time, but it gets easier quite quickly with practice, which is how they learn to write with their right hand. So reflective feedback is the last part there. So for details of that book, you can go to Amazon. I put it out on Amazon as a paperback. It's not available as an ebook, and it's not available in other languages yet. We will see what the future holds. All of my books are on Amazon.com. They're also on Amazon in your local area. So you can actually buy it in Europe, in America, in Sweden, for that matter, which is where I live. And translations to other languages are underway. I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you learn from it. And I hope from the bottom of my heart that you begin to use collegial coaching conversations to release the full potential of your teachers, because that would release the full potential of your students. And that can only be a good thing. My name is Martin Richards, and I look forward to seeing you again.